Okay, now, what we have now, we've finished our picture, and we've now got to decide what to do about the background. And this is what I'm generally faced with. Another problem that you might look at there and think, don't like that much, Cole. That really does look as though he's cut his head off. Well, that wouldn't happen, of course. What I would do there is, let me show you. Although you've seen this many times before, but I'll show you anyway. What I would do is I would bring the colour down. I'll just do half, and you can see the difference. I would bring that colour, that white colour down, and I wouldn't worry about the grey, and that, which is the idea, is just to show you how it finishes. I come down to about there, and then I blend it with my finger, and that will blend out. Now that looks better than that. Even if you left it and didn't do any more about it, just tidy it up a bit and sort of, let's just put a tidy up job there. That's all right. I think if you just left it like that, you get away with it. Although I wouldn't want to, because I like backgrounds on. You see the difference between those two. So never ever finish on the line. Another problem is if you have a hard finish. Say you decided to do here a grey. Okay, let's have a look at the grey now. And we use a little bit of white first. Just give me a thing. I'll do 3 different backgrounds here for you. Rub that in so we've got the base, and then we go with our grey like that. And isn't that awful? But I'm afraid I've seen that many, many times. How much easier is it to actually do that, which is far more acceptable? Do you see what I mean? So this, let me just finish this off, and this is how this would look. And then we'd put the background in. Let's do this little tiny bit. If you're wondering that I'm spoiling these pictures, all these pictures I'm going to show you are pictures that I used to do in workshops. And because I used to show people how to do this, I didn't finish the backgrounds off. I used to do one of the customers' backgrounds, one of the clients' backgrounds, or help them. So it gives me a whole load of pictures like this for me to help you. So I haven't done this picture especially for you, but you see how much nicer that is. And what about if we wanted to put a bit of, you see, now look at the eye there. We've got a little bit of ochre in the eye. So let's just quickly find some ochre. So just a little bit of ochre in there. Not a lot, just a little. Would be a colour that I would use. Anyway, you can see this background because if you go to the print section of the website, you'll see that picture. A better version of that, mind you. This was only a workshop picture, but the full version is done, and you'll see how it looks absolutely fantastic. Okay, that's got that. Now, this is another picture, which is the result of another workshop, and you can see how what I've done here is that I've got 2 areas there. See, the idea was, if you imagine that coming down to there, right, down to there, and then cut it off, it looks too posed. Now, this just looks as though he's poking his head through a cloud. See? So I'll do a little bit of this to show you. And the first thing to do when you're looking at the background is decide whether you want it to be a light background, a medium background, or a dark background. Now, we're going to deal at the moment with a light background, or a medium background, light to medium background in this particular case, right? So what we've got to decide in which base colour to use. Now, if you look at the picture, these are the base colours that I would generally use. One of these I would use for a light or a medium colour background. And I'll just go through them to you. Obviously, you've got white. I've got 270, which is the light warm grey. I've got the 230, which is the light cool grey. I've got ivory. In fact, I've got 2 ivories there. I only want one of them. Ivory, 103, and the pink, which is 132. Now, all of those colours are soft colours. In other words, they'll rub in really well into the paper. Let me just show you, just before we actually start the picture itself, what I mean by that. I'll come close so you can see better. Now let's start with the white. Now, that rubs in, as you know, really well. Next comes ivory. That rubs in brilliantly. The warm grey, 270. Got very friendly pencils here. They all want to get in on the act. Warm grey is good. Light grey. And finally, pink. Don't use this often. This would be used if you had a portrait, for instance, you wanted to do as a picture. So there we are. 5 colours, which are really good base colours. And any colour you choose from here, although I'm going to choose perhaps an orange, or even a ochre, or even a grey again, or even a red. Now, those will all rub in to whichever colour. See how well that goes in? Disappears. So it doesn't matter which one you do, it's all going to work. However, if you were to say put those same colours, get the right colour, Colin. If you would put those same colours on here, that wasn't the colour, but I've lost it. Oh, here, orange. You would put that same colour on there and rub it. You get marking. It doesn't work the same way, right? And what other colour did I use? This one. If you use that one and rub it, doesn't work, does it? No matter how much you rub, you're going to get that marking left there. And grey. Do the whole thing. That's the same grey. Again, see the marking underneath and the red. This would be the worst one. Go away. Actually, it wasn't the worst one. It's not too bad, but you can still see the marking there. So this is the difference. Let me just go through those again and show you the difference between the two. See, with the pink underneath, you get that. With the grey underneath, you get that. I'm sorry, I'm running out of fingers here. But if you're getting the gist of this anyway, you can see how it's all working. And of course, I don't have to go through it. You know that that's going to work now. On top of there, it didn't work there. And you know that the orange is going to work there. Brilliant. So there we are. Now, this is the reason why we put a base colour. Do you put a base colour under everything, Colin? Under even if you're putting soft pastels? The answer to that is yes. Now, the reason for that, I'll go into that a little bit more fully when we deal with the Polychromos and the soft pastel later on in the series. But basically, what you're doing is you've got to put a key on here. If you don't put a key on the paper, the pastel won't stay on. The soft pastel rubs off. And I've had instances where customers, what they've done, they've put no pastel pencil on, they've just gone straight in with the soft pastel and rubbed and rubbed and rubbed and rubbed and rubbed, and then said, Colin, when you do it, yours stays on. Mine just rubs away. And that's the reason. You need a key. So that when you put your pastel on there, your pastel pencil on, whatever colour you're using, you're providing a key. And that key is paramount to the success of the Polychromos soft pastel that goes on afterwards. So in every case, every single case, without exception, I would put a pastel pencil on first. Not necessarily a light one. I could use, for instance, if I was using a dark colour, I could use a green. Look, let's put a green on, like this. And I could put a bit of, what should I put? A bit of ochre in there as well. And love it. Now, although it will do what these were doing, what we're looking for is a dark colour. So if we were looking at, say, that, let's say we were using that, you remember that dark tiger and the owl that I showed you earlier? Well, I would use a base like that to start with. And then the colours that I would be putting on top of that, the brown, that would rub in, and then maybe a little bit of, let's go to a very dark green. I'll rub that in, and then the black. Now watch this difference as well. The black will go on top of that. Now I wouldn't normally, well, I do sometimes actually use pastel pencils, and that will give you that. Now what I've actually got there is a lovely colour. If I try to do that on this ivory, the ivory colour, the light colour underneath, would actually affect to a certain extent that darkness there. So instead of starting at a medium colour, which I did here, and I started with a light colour with that, I'd end up with a light wishy-washy colour there. So if I was going dark, I wouldn't do it. But if I was going to use black on its own, which people think, oh, I'm not going to bother with all that. Greens and browns and, oh God, no, I'm going to put, I haven't got a room here, I'm going to put black on. Look at the difference that would make. Awful. You see, that's a nice colour, it's a nice tone. You can almost imagine the jungly scene with that in, but that, black on its own, is devastating. So there are rules, folks, and you've got to follow them, because if you don't, well, I told you so. Situation. Okay, coming back to our lion. Now, for the base colour on the Lioness, I'm going to use an ivory. And what you do with that is you go in really close. Why did you use ivory, Colin, and not white? Well, the reason I did that is I could see, if I looked at the picture, I could see a great deal of warmth in there. You know, so I felt the white would have been too stark. It's just a feeling. It's your choice you make. Now, here, this is a situation that I was talking about earlier. Now, here, what we've got is I've finished that off, sort of. What I do now is I bring the ivory into the picture slightly. There are actually two ways you could do this. In fact, I'll show you both ways. And I've used both. So on this side, I'm thinking, I'll just finish it off. I might as well see it all. That's why I had two ivories, folks. See how important it is? Okay, now I've rubbed that in, and that duster that you see on there, you can see quite a lot of dust in there. Well, I leave that on there. I never get rid of it until I've finished rubbing. Because believe it or not, most of it disappears into the paper. No, it doesn't. That. So there we are. So now I've got a nice. Even if you left it like that, it's better than that. I agree. You'll agree. But we don't want to leave it like that. We want to pursue it. This is pretty simple. Once you get the hang of this, everybody can do this. And I never understand why people don't do it. Anyway. Now I do the same on the other side. Right, I've done that all over there. And I rub that in the same way as I've done. I rub that in. And there we are. That's all finished. Ah, that looks nice, doesn't it? So it looks like coming out of the fog. So these are the choices we've got. We can either add our colours as we feel we want them. So a little bit of ochre. Remember my little example earlier on. I said we can put in these colours quite safely now. We've got the base colour underneath. I'm going to put a bit of pink in there as well. Now, just before I move on, what are you doing, Colin? Why not all over? Well, the key is now, because you do it like this, when you actually rub that, you get different tones within it. Now let's have a little bit of brightness as well, a bit of orange. See, all this is warm colours I'm putting in here at the moment. I want a bit of grey as well. Now I'm going to use, I think I'm going to use a warm grey. Is that a warm grey? Yes, it is. Just a little bit of warm grey. And notice that I do crisscross patterns as well. You believe it? That looks nice, Colin. No, not really. But you could leave it like that. Now, I want a bit of wet warmth and depth here. So I'm now looking for, look on my pencils here, you wouldn't believe how many I've got out. I'm going to put a little bit of, now normally I put tape on there, but I haven't got any at the moment because this is tape free. I'll put a little bit of that one there, and there, and there, a little bit of there, and there, and there. Okay, now let's have a look at that and see what happens when we rub it. Okay, now when I'm rubbing, this is another very important thing. I'm using my finger with quite a lot of pressure on it, okay? Enough to put it in and keeping it tight. God, that's good, Carl. Now, it's only good because I put the base on. Look at that beautiful tone. Now, you tell me you can't do that with practice. But look at the difference between the two. Anyway, let's continue with that. So that wasn't a fluke. Down there. Now, you're always going to touch the edge of the picture. You can't avoid it. But a situation like this, let's just move up here just a touch so I can show you that too. There's the ivory gone in. Now, these are the colours, some of the colours I use. But what I'm going to use here is I'm going to add a little bit more weight to it. You've got to be careful not to make it too obvious. These are the colours that I used before, a little bit of grey. And that rubs in. And that rubs in so it goes against the white. Now you should be able to see the white better. So when you come back later on in your picture, you can then show the white against it. See that? How bright that is? And it wasn't that strong, was it? But it's enough to with the effect. So this is the reason I do that. Now down here looks good so far. Now here, what I want to do here is I want to actually melt that colour in. So I would then build some of the, I've lost my colour now. Oh, here we are. So what I'm going to do now is going to bring that back. Now it's a bit of pink. It's also a little bit of pinky ochre colour in there as well. Like that. We'll bring some of that into here. There's some of this into here. Same colour I'm using. And then just blend that. And then blend that. Usually takes a little bit of work, but generally you get that effect. It looks as though it's coming out of the cloud. Isn't that lovely? Now over here, let's do all this again and show you another alternative. Pink. Grey. Ochre. Bit of orange, I put in, didn't I? Bit of orange. A bit of grey. I've got grey already. What am I looking for then? I'm looking for 1/8. I'm looking for my... Oh, I might not be able to find it now. I put a pencil down amongst the 70 pencils I've actually got alongside me at the moment. You don't believe me, do you? All right, well, watch this. Now, do you believe? Sorry about the squeaking. My stand's a bit squeaky. I know you didn't believe me, but I've got all those pencils. So it's surprising. Not surprising I lose them, but I did find it when I went back there. There we are. Now, look, there we are. Now, blend it again. So we get exactly the same. But no, you can actually pick up the individual colours. I can, but you may not be able to on the screen. And when you've done that, you leave it alone. Don't touch it again. It's fine. Don't keep rub, otherwise it all ends up. Now, here, this is the difference it makes. What I do here is I bring the colour back in, and this time, instead of blending it, I kind of... Now, some people prefer that, and some people don't. And it's your choice, really. A little bit of extra strength down here, coming in here. Like that. And later on I'm going to show you the similar sort of thing in another part of the program, where I use Soft Pastel, and to be honest, it's better than this is. Soft Pastel and Polychromos, so I can get some better effects. But I've got some smashing backgrounds to show you in this series. Now you can put it out, when you do that, all you do is you pull it back in, like that. And down here, where you've got the white coming in, you do the same thing with the white. In fact, what I would do is exaggerate that slightly. Like that. So you have your choice. You either lay it like that, or you leave it like that. You can't really do a combination of both. You've got to do either or. But I think you'll agree that that looks rather nice and very simple. Now, if you really wanted to go to town like this, say you did do this and you think that's great, you can add a little bit more weight to it. Maybe a little grey. I'll just do this corner so you can see what I mean by that. You can just bring a little bit of weight into it. You see that? Slightly different to that. So there we are. That moves. We now move on. This is another one which I did earlier. This is in blue, typical Blue Peter fashion, only a slightly smaller picture. There's another one that really looks more or less as you saw the last one. The colouring might be slightly different, but there we are. Now that looks the same, but what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to move on to the next level. Okay, we've dealt with the simplistic background using the pastel pencils, and now I'm going to take you to the next level, and these are Polychromos pastel sticks. Now they are the next thing that we're going to be dealing with, and I'm going to be putting those onto this background to show you. Back to the picture. Now the reason I mention to you that I don't like the darker colours particularly on it is because they do leave marks. You've seen that already. So I tend to use the lighter ones, but they are very good for that. So let me just show you how I can increase, just by using these colours, we can increase the strength. So basically you go over the same, let me say over the same ground that I did before with the ivory. Now obviously the ivory was put on first in this case, but in here a little bit of white. The white is much stronger than the white of the pastel pencil, so you can enhance it. It's ideal for clouds and so on, but it works very well in a situation like this, where you want a little bit of extra weight to it. And then a little bit of, this is 186. Now I use 187, but it's very similar colouring, so we can use a 186 here. Now watch me as I develop this. You get a little bit more depth. Can you see that? Just a little bit more strength. I'll let you compare it in a minute or two. There you go. There we are. Now see how much stronger that is to that. And if we want to add a bit more, we can add a little bit of, this is 172, a little bit of green, maybe just a little touch of black, grey. Don't want too much of that, just a little bit of that, and that adds a little bit of weight. Now look at the difference between the two. Now I'll finish this off using these colours, and you can have a look at it when it's finished. Well, there we are. I've finished that off. As you can see, it looks much different now, much stronger, much more. But what I'm going to show you is that we can add. These are so soft, they can be added. And when you add them, you don't completely rub them in this second time. Let me show you what I mean by that. Just a little touch of the finger, because you've put a lot of base in there, and that just leaves a little bit of texture there. And if you look at some of my pictures, you'll see that occurs more frequently than you think. Just a little bit of extra weight there, a little bit, don't want too much, just a touch. is all you need, just to put a little bit of weight in. Then you can add some light in, a little bit of white in this case, or a little bit of ivory, or in this case, a bit of both. Just a touch. And then that little pink again, which I quite like, because it picks up the pink of the nose, you see, like that. Now, I haven't rubbed that completely in. You can just see just clouds of texture. So those are the options you've got. And with Polychromos, you can do it. But as I must say, you don't need the dark colours. You don't want any of the dark colours. These are dark enough, because otherwise it would spoil it. But what we can do is to use Soft Pastel. And that's the next thing. So remember this picture? You can always replay it anyway and have a look at it again. But I'm going to now add Soft Pastel to that. Right, now we're going to move on to the Soft Pastel and see what a difference this makes. Now these are quite inexpensive. You can buy these almost anywhere in the art shops. A little small half-tone. When you're starting out, this is a good idea. I mean, I've got in my collection, I've got all sorts of soft pastels that I can call upon. But when you're starting out, this is quite adequate, to be honest with you. And I used to recommend these, and we used to use them for my workshops. This is actually one of the workshop packs I had. But you see the lovely range, 72 colours there. So we can pick out some of the colours, which I shall do, put in here. And I'm going to start with some of the lighter ones again. And then gradually I'm going to end up using the very dark colours. The dark greys, I might even put a bit of black in there, and certainly the reds and so on. All of these colours can be added. So we're going to go overboard here to show you how far you can take it. So let's start off with a few light colours. I'm going to add a couple of colours that, let's put a couple of these colours in here. These are the ochres to start with. That'll do to start with, a little bit of ochre. Just start with them. You can always, of course, bring the white and the ivory, although I'm actually using a slightly creamier colour here. So we can put, let me just show you this, a little bit of, it's not going to show up that much, but that looks nice. And sometimes, you see, you get, when you're using this, you see like colours like that, and I end up with some colours I never even thought I had. But if I put that on there, you see that colour there? A little bit of extra weight there, like that, and a little bit of ochre in there. A bit of yellow ochre. So you can go to town here. I'm just going to add a little bit of white there, and a little bit of cream. That's it. Now, that's all those colours put in. Let's see what that looks like when we rub it. This is definitely a wow factor when you get to here. You think, oh, look at that strength and colour. This is not as easy, of course, as using the other methods I've pointed out to you, but that's rather nice, isn't it? And I say, you can always bring back your ivories, always bring back your lights, and that's one of the lovely things about soft pastel. You can do that. You can't do it with pastel pencil, but you can do it with this. So if you want to add a little bit of light, you just do that, and back comes the light. Now I'm going to work all round with that, and we'll come back and we'll have a look at making it just a bit stronger. Right, you join me again as I'm just finishing off the last section of the background there. Now, what I want to do now is come back in with my light colours again, and I want to bring that a little lighter, so a little bit of white, and that lightens that up. Good. And just round the ear. You see, you've got a bit of a halo around there. You see that? And I don't like that, so what I'll do here, I'm just going to make it just a little darker there, and I'll show you how I get rid of halos. That's good. Now, go around with the ear again. And what I do is I come out through there. Let's get rid of the rest of that pastel. There we are now. I get the light going through the ear, coming out the other side. And here, I'm just going to make it just a little darker. There. Lovely. See, so I've got the light coming through here, through the other side of the ear. And now, the other, we can't be too contrived, I did it again. But what I can do is put some light down here. Bring some light back up to there. Don't worry that you're touching, or I'm touching the subject. That's nice. Now, just moving it around here, you might be wondering why I've got newspaper under here. Well, the reason I've got that newspaper is because it makes a right mess. That's one disadvantage you've got with this. It does, it's a bit messy. Well, it's not a bit, it's very messy. See, and you end up getting mess all over, so I'm protecting my surface a bit here. Okay, there we go. Now, doesn't that look nice? You see the difference that's made to it? Now, they're the light shades, all those light shades I've used there. But what if we really want to go to town here? We want to add a few more. So let me select a few colours that will add a little bit more. Now, we've got to be careful because we've already got a lot of ochre in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to strengthen the ochre. I happen to know that blue and red, let's find a suitable red. That won't be a good one. Those two are fantastic together. I'll show you that in a minute. And we want a little bit of, I think I have to keep rust. I can't go too green here because we've gone into the different tone, but I'll have a grey. That grey is a good one. So I'm going to go, those are kind of colours that I know will work with what I've got here. So let me just put a little bit of grey. Oh my God, you'll say to yourself when you do that. Oh, no. That's far too strong. I'm just going to do this corner. Now watch this. A little bit of blue. And a little bit of red. A bit more blue. You think I've ruined it? Looks like it, doesn't it? Watch this. Because you've got because you've got all that colour underneath, you've got a fantastic... Let me just come closer so you can see this work. It's magic. Well, there we are now. That's where I leave it at this stage. This is... So it's three different backgrounds we put on. One simple one a little bit more complicated, and the one with the soft pastel, which is stronger still. But I think you'll agree that it wasn't that difficult. Anyway, what we've got now is we've got to finish the picture off, so I might as well do that for you and show you. We just bring a little bit of because you would have touched the background, and just bring a little bit of the darker colour on here, just round here. This is the one that I use on the animal, the darker colour on the animal. Obviously, if you've got a light edge, and bring a little bit of that colour on to smooth it round for you, so you can see it. You almost certainly would have touched some of the light, so there's probably some the white in here that would have been affected by it. So again, you need to pick up on that too. Like that. People said to me, "Do you do the background first?" Well, now you can see that I never do the background first. I always do the animal first, and then the background. But you can see how easy it is to actually pick it back up again. So it's much more simplistic this way. A little bit of touch on there. And let's go right round. Spin it round. And we can bring some of the hair over the background. That'll be nice. The whiskers, in this particular case, the whiskers weren't long enough, but normally you'd bring a whisker over if it extended beyond that, which it doesn't, as it happens. So there we are. Now that's gone all round, and just put a few little bits of white in as well, and we can just pull this down. Now again, you've got two choices here. You see the same thing I told you in an earlier episode, we can bring the colour down, and we can either bring the subject into the background like that, or the background into the subject like that. Either way it works, and you say it works well. So let's continue with that down here. Let's bring a little bit more in. I mean, you could take it even further if you wanted to. You could bring actually it down as far as that, so it kind of comes into the background and continues. That looks quite nice. I'll leave it like that, I think. Yeah, I like that. So, let's do it like that. I like that. And just come down here with... here you've got a choice. You can either use the white pencil, which works very well, as you can see. In fact, I think I probably will use that. The other option would have been use a Polychromos, but I'm not going to. I'm going to use the white. I think I like that. In fact, I quite like the idea of that. You can see again, you could have the white disappearing like that. Very pretty, Colin. And then all you do then is, if you can find a suitable pencil. I've done it again, folks. I put the pencil down and I'll lose it. And now I found it again. And then you put your signature on. There we are, like that. And off it comes. And this is a bit I like, of course. It looks like you put a mount on it. Poor Lioness thinking, at last, I've waited 5 years for you to do this to me. That's how long ago this picture was done. 5 years, waiting to be finished. And now you've done it. Thank you, Colin. Well, thank you, Lioness. That looks super, doesn't it? Anyway, I think that's taken us. Now, we've got to move on from here to take you to yet another level. And that is to use the pastel as grasses and atmosphere. That's an altogether different picture. But when you've got a picture like this, when you've got a picture that melts into the background, it's probably a good idea never to make it too dark. I think that looks good.